to tell us, I'll take my niece whose mother cannot afford to pay fees, and I'll take care of her until she's 18. We are being told to be more communal and to be more deliberate. Next slide. I'll be guided.
We are supposed to ask questions at the end of the session. Please just write it down.
Thank you very much. Just write it down. So how can we take care of OVC? OVC is orphans and vulnerable children, the ones I was highlighting. It could be a child in the street, and mark you're not allowed to call them street children. They are not owned by the street. You get the difference? This is like English teacher and teacher of English. They are not owned by the street. They are just in the street. Walijipata tu wamefika huko. So the other children in our communities who may need a bit of care and attention. So there's what I highlighted: foster care, kinship adoption, adopting a child within your family, somebody related to you by blood. And then there's guardianship. It doesn't give you full rights. These are the issues we have to address, and we be more deliberate to be able to take care of these children. Best interest principle in all matters concerning a child. The best interest principle is always applied. And then the authorities. I want to challenge each one of you, because the law gives a responsibility to each one of us that if you find a child who is in distress, you have a duty to make sure you report to the authorities. So I'm going to list for you who are these authorities, and it's not on the slide. So we have the chiefs, the police officers, we have the children's office. Every sub-county in Kenya, sub-county, has a children's office. You can report any child who you find distressed by the roadside. You find a child is crying by the roadside, what are you supposed to do? Don't take them home. They'll arrest you for other offenses. We don't want you to get into trouble. So the police officers, as I said. And worst case scenario, you can drop them at the courthouse. Most of the court rooms have children's courts. So those are the 5 main places where you can intervene. And remember, we are talking about this conversation of we want children out of the streets and out of the homes by the year 2032. Next slide. So, domestic violence. I had asked whether Christian couples fight, and there was a loud A. Yes, they fight. What is domestic violence? Domestic violence is violence within the home. It can be caused by a spouse or any other person occupying that home, because it could be an in-law, a parent-in-law, a daughter-in-law, somebody you're related with by virtue of being a family. It can be physical, it can be psychological or emotional, and it can be financial. We think it's normal to deny our spouses, some allowance, but it's not normal, because the assumption is that at the point you're getting married for companionship, and you're getting married to support each other. So these are things that are very serious. We have the act that protects a victim of violence from further violence, because if it's already happened, there's really nothing to protect. You can only prevent in the future. And then we have the police intervention. If you've been beaten and it's assault, then you should be able to report to the nearest police station, and the suspect, whoever caused that assault, will be charged, and they go through the processes. So if you forget anything from this slide, because it's a very short presentation on domestic violence, don't forget protection orders. Because you see, for for couples when they get into that sort of confusion, then you have to be careful that you don't cause a death or something worse, because you see, a marriage should not turn into a death sentence whereby somebody dies and it could have been avoided. So we are Christians, but we are also saying there are options which we'll be covering in the next slide to just discuss what can be done and what cannot be done, and how can you walk away. So we had already tackled, should marriage turn to a death sentence? It should not. When and how can one walk away? We will be discussing in the next slide. Next. So we have covered the systems of marriage. We've seen children and what can go wrong to them. We've seen domestic violence. You can see things are getting worse. I think I started on the softer side. Now things are getting tight. It was very nice talking about children, not so. But now when it comes to divorce and the separation, there is of course the question of, does the Bible allow for divorce? I'm not going to take the pastor's seats or positions because I said I'm here as an advocate, so there's quite a lot that we can talk about in terms of divorce. So the Marriage Act that I had highlighted before, it gives those reasons. You can see there's adultery, that's infidelity, cruelty, not treating your partner well, desertion of up to 3 years, but believe you me, the law has changed and the judges have said you don't have to wait 3 years because of free will and conscience. You can't suffer for 3 years. Even 1 day of desertion and things not working is enough for you to do what you have to do. No, I know it feels funny, but that has changed over time because of the Constitution. Depravity, not providing the companionship and the very things that united you as a couple. You get what I'm saying? The very things that brought you together, suddenly they are not working. You got married so that you can share a bed, and then you just fight. Sharing a bed becomes an abomination. And then someone has moved to the servant quarter. Are these common stories? We are talking of stories, not experiences. I'm not going to embarrass anyone because I don't know anyone's story, but as a practitioner, these are things we come across every day. Someone has moved to the servant quarter because they can't look at each other eye to eye. The same person you call darling, sweetheart, bae, gani ingine, darling, sweetheart, bae, rose flower, honey pie, Now you start calling each other names of animals. You know, dogs, cats. Oh no, cats are nice. So, and then irretrievable breakdown. You can't live in the same room. So, you can go straight up to divorce, or you can first separate to see whether you can have a talk. Of course, the law offers an opportunity to do mediation, so that when you go through mediation, if the marriage is working, you don't have to file a divorce. You can just reconcile. So, next slide. So once you go through the divorce, there is the decree issued, the first one for waiting 1 month. Then the decree absolute is the final one. A common question is asked, can I remarry the same person after a divorce? Maybe I should ask, have you ever heard of a couple who has divorced and then remarried? Yes. After going through the whole process. And even the decree absolute is issued. And then mukaitwa sherehe. Nice. Yeah. it happens. I also know such a couple. I'm not going to embarrass anyone, but it's a senior pastor in this city. He went through the divorce, and within no time, there was another marriage to the same person. Because, you know, the question is, how many times can you divorce and remarry? You've got to make a decision. This is a final, like, I'm going to get into it, you know, ready to finish the race, because some people don't want to finish the race, and it's unfortunate, eh? But it's also fortunate because, you see, divorce helps you preempt a worse thing like a death, violence. Umepata hata mtu ametolewa macho, the lady from Machakos, she was amputated in a marriage setup. That was not nice. So the law offers that opportunity. So once a divorce has happened and you have the decree absolute, we get to talk about matrimonial property. Next slide. So matrimonial property, I'll be moving very fast because we don't have much time. Matrimonial property is defined as simple as that. Property that you have bought as a couple when the marriage is still on. So you would not count property before you got married to the person, and you would not count property that you have acquired after a divorce. So it's defined in such a simple way. It can be either the matrimonial home, the household goods, or the personal effects, immovable or movable. And then matrimonial home is where you keep a home. After work, where do you return to as a couple? Is it the village? Is it within the city? A lot of people have different matrimonial homes. I'm not saying they have many, but you could be counting that you have a matrimonial home in the village, and you also have a matrimonial home in the city, and you could be having a matrimonial home down at the coast, whereby you go to take a breather when the temperatures rise in this city. Pastor Sube, you missed a joke. We were talking about temperatures when I started my presentation. And I said everyone's temperature is accurate because everyone feels differently. And you can imagine now for people who go down to the coast to cool down after a long week. That's still a matrimonial home in the strict definition of it, because you have placed a value to it as a family. So there's a rule about contribution. What have you brought to the table, so that we determine how much you will get when distributing the matrimonial property. And contribution can mean actual money. Actual money. I took a loan at KCB of 1 million, and I gave to my wife, and she put up our Camp David in Diani, and I want a share of that property. So the court looks at very many things, including now for wives, there is the contribution of the companionship, the homemaking. You know those chores that men are not very good at? In some instances, they are counted as contribution. The men may not be able to iron their clothes very well, and the wives will organize the ironing, even if it's through the house girl. Not so. Even if it's through the house girl, I'm the one who organized. So for lawyers, we get into those conversations of whether the ironing was good enough, whether the line was straight enough, whether the man was happy, and whether he was at peace. So those are things we look at. The child care for women is also a big thing, because if a wife takes 3 years to raise the 4 kids they've gotten before, because she feels the pressure, she can't continue working, raising 4 kids born in a span of 5 years, and the man wants to dispossess her of the property that he bought within that phase, yet he continued working. You see, this is for argument. There's no straight line. It's not cast on stone, black or white. You've got to look at each case. Kesi hazifanani. What is a family business? It's a business run for the benefit of the family and which brings income to the home. So even the family business is one of those things to look at when you're distributing the matrimonial property. Next slide. So yes, I've already defined that. Family trusts, family companies, all these are things that generate income within the family setup. Next. So we also get to look at a spouse shall not be evicted from the matrimonial home. You saw the case of Mithika Linturi and Marianne Kaitani. And the couple is given the protection by the court. Of course, there are many things to consider, including the mortgage and the loans and the trusteeship and all that. Next slide. So we look at the separate property that does not affect the right of either spouse to own or dispose of any property other than matrimonial property. So if I bought a property before we got married, and that is my own property 100%, you can't argue it's matrimonial property. So one way or another, the owner is given the right to manage without maswali mengi. So the most interesting thing I like talking about is when the matrimonial property is acquired in a polygamous setup, and the pastor will excuse me, because Christians are not supposed to be in a polygamous setup, but you see, for us lawyers, we come across these things. Because even if Christians are not supposed to be in a polygamous setup, doesn't it happen? Yeah. It happens. You've seen cases whereby an MP has died, and on the burial date, there are like 3 wives who've turned up and 4 mistresses. Have you experienced that? So this is the reality. So there's the distribution. In the names of the spouses, there's a presumption that there's a beneficial interest in the matrimonial property. The gifts are considered once and for all. They are gifts and they are of sentimental value, so you cannot recall. Usinipe shamba leo na kesho ukuje uchukue. Next slide. Yeah, the trust property held in a customary setting, it does not form part of the matrimonial property. That's why we don't talk about ancestral land as matrimonial property, because it has quite a lot of complications. And then we'll still look at property acquired before marriage is not part of the property. I had explained that. And then where there's no prenuptial agreement, the property vests in the spouse according to the contribution of either spouse towards its acquisition and shall be divided, not equally between the spouses. That's what I was explaining. It's not a 50-50. The court looks at very many things, including what I said, the cooking, the ironing, the taking care of the children. So there's that case that we highlight. FIDA was seeking a 50-50 distribution, and the courts over time, they argue each case is unique. You can't put people in the same setup. So the bit of matrimonial property, the one I was explaining, you will find a man was married to this lady, and then along the way, because the customary marriage, it allows polygamy, it allows more than one wife, he's gotten a second wife. The question is, if he acquires property with this second wife, and remember he has the first wife, and then there's a divorce, what is supposed to happen? Do you find that funny? Yes. You've been married from 1990 to 2000, you had one wife. 2000 to 2010, you had 2 wives, and you've acquired property in that phase. And then the next phase, 2000 to 2010, you have a 3rd wife and a 4th wife. So the distribution formula, again, the courts still look at you know, the ratios. It gets very mathematical. Imagine, you have to do proper mathematics. When there was one wife, you know, you almost want to lean towards the 50-50. But when there are two wives, you see the two wives now share out the 50%. So it's a 50, 25, 25. And then when it's three wives, they share the 50%. So it's 50, 16, 16, 16, and so on and so forth. Unaona mahesabu vile inakuwa nyingi? Yes, but not to worry. That's why the lawyers come in, just to protect the interest, so that at least no one is left behind. Everyone is taken care of. Next slide. So, is it possible for a wife to hold her matrimonial property with the husband separate from that of the other wives? Then there's a question of any wife can own matrimonial property equally with the husband without the participation of the other wife or wives. It just depends on the MOU. You can get into an agreement. And that is why we are encouraging families, especially the big families, get into a family arrangement. Family agreements are very good because you clear any doubt about the ownership, so that if you get into an MOU and you argue, this is a contribution 50-50, and the third wife will never have to claim any part of the property. So next slide. I'm moving very fast because Christians, we said, are not supposed to be in polygamous unions. But then this is life. It's happening. So the liability incurred before remained the liability of that spouse. Parties to a marriage share liabilities. So if you take a loan within the marriage to build a home, then you've got to know that once you divorce, you've got to take care of that loan that you took to put up a home, or that mortgage to put up a home. So they're justifiably incurred, they are shared equally. Next slide, so that we don't repeat. So things to note, and for us, as I wrap up that slide, matrimonial property cannot be sold during a monogamous marriage without the consent of both spouses. So when we got the new constitution and then laws were passed, one of the laws that really takes care of couples is the Land Act, whereby you cannot sell property without the consent of your spouse. But the truth is, there are people who are still navigating and they are selling. Yes, see, dunia iko na wakora. Aren't some also Christians? So those are some of the issues that we'll be looking at. And they are quite serious, because you can see, we want to be honest as Christians, but then the world is twisted. So the moment you dispossess that spouse by not getting the consent, you expose yourself, because si tulisema pale mbeleni, with equal rights and responsibility as a couple. So why do you want to leave your spouse behind and just keep on owning things, and even that property you bought together, you want to sell it without their permission, which is what we are calling a consent. So that is just something to note. Next slide. We should be moving to the next subtopic. So this one I will move very fast. It's succession and estate management. What are we revoking? What do you think we are revoking? Revoke what? Or is it impeach? We are revoking a will. So next slide. Succession is about distributing the properties of a dead person. Death happens in the family, doesn't it? We are all mortal. One day we will die. So when you die, what sort of legacy do you want to leave? And that is why for Christians, I ask them, why aren't you writing a will? And this is not just Christians, it's everyone. Why aren't you writing a will, so that when you're gone, the fights are not as much as you'd think, because when you don't leave a will, you live on your wishes. Okay. But when you give a will, you give clarity, you give a guidance, like, oh, the Camp David in Kwale that I talked about, I leave it to my beloved daughter, who I love. The truth is, in wills, you're not even supposed to express emotions. Yes, you're not supposed to be expressive, the lovey-dovey. It's not wrong, but it doesn't add any value to my son, who I love most, because he did what? Because he cooked for me very nice sausages for breakfast. I bequeath to you, my lad in Lavington. No, it's good. It's good to be sentimental, but you can avoid that bit. So the most important thing in succession is to know that when you write a will, be fair. Be fair to all the beneficiaries. Because you see, we came to this earth and we have been given a heritage. We have our children and maybe the spouse and the parents that we have. The Law of Succession Act provides, it tells you who is the closest beneficiary. It even goes, what do you call this? A curve, a structure of the closest person to you. Because in the first degree, it's your spouse, your parent, and your child. The siblings come next. The cousins, the uncles and the aunties, the nieces and the nephews below that. So if you write a will, and then, Pastor Vicky, I notice you've given your paternal uncle, and yet, just giving an example, and yet you have your children, and God forbid you're going to live long. You see, the question will be asked, why did she bypass her own children? Kwa nini aliwavuka akaenda hapo nje? Is it that the people she gave that property, they influenced her? And remember, in a minute, I'll be talking about what needs to be completed in a will. There's the will needs to be signed in front of two people. You need to be of sound mind. Akili ikuwe timamu, kila kitu ikuwe sawa. So we look at all those things when a will is being challenged, because you should be fair. Just as in the Old Testament, the 12 tribes of Israel, each of them was given its inheritance. The Bible draws a lot of, the Lord draws a lot of inspiration even from the Bible. Next slide. So we get on to talk about a will can be written or it can be oral. But if you give an oral will, it has to be done within the 3 months. If you die after 3 months, then the will is not valid. So you can imagine if you give an oral will and then you don't die after 3 months, that's not valid. But then we are Africans. I know why people don't like writing wills. I know. Pastor Vicky, you think you're going to write a will and then ukue mkufi? God forbid. So there is quite a lot of stigma around writing wills, but it's good for tidying up. So the written will, I said, in the presence of 2 witnesses, and each witness must sign the will in the presence of the testator, but not necessarily in the presence of each other. Next slide. So I'm repeating because we talked about capacity, kusikue na wizi, don't force issues. The 2 witnesses have to sign the will, not necessarily in the presence of each other. Next. So the critical question is, have you written your will? Have you written your will? I'm not going to embarrass anyone, so that is for your own reflection. If you have not written the will, why have you not written the will? It's critical. But not to worry, because even if you die and you, excuse me, you have not written a will, the law provides for what is called intestate succession, a succession without a will, and the court will help the family distribute with the fairness that is needed. So there's quite a lot to talk about: succession, wills, how to take care of the future, what is the alternative to a will, can a trust company work? You saw there have been issues with some families that set up a perpetual trust, and it doesn't work, and the beneficiaries are left fighting. Those are issues that Christians also face, and they can tackle, if you know what I mean. Like, you can preempt, and you can write that trust in a way that it doesn't cause more problems once you're done. So next. Surprise. Surprise. So, which mountain within the 6 issues I have highlighted are you scaling as I finish? And are you willing to scale it better with perfection and with the tips that you have learned today? And remember, today I was just giving a summary. This can take a whole day. Next year, Pastor Sube will give me 3 hours. I will be pleading to be given 3 hours because there's a lot to talk about, but that is the end of my presentation. Scale your mountain of family issues in a wiser way. Consult a lawyer where you must. Na musisahau hapo kwa watoto. Take care of the children within community, because we are closing children's home. Now I'm also government, because I'm a Kenyan. Isn't government you, I, and the other one? Because children will be out of the children's homes by the year 2032. So that is the end of my presentation. Next. Yes, that's my profile, and I'm done. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mercy. That was a very, very enlightening moment and teaching. And please do not go, because we need to ask some questions. Let me start with you. You had a question?
Yeah, I actually have several. I'm a marriage officer, so I have a concern on some few things. Now, I would like to understand what I mean by marriage officer. Means that I have a license to officiate a marriage.
You're licensed.
Yeah, I'm licensed, yes. Now, when it comes to customary marriage, I would like to know who is the officiating officer, whether there is an officiating officer. And now, when it comes to come we stay, there was a time, I don't know whether it was by rumors, that if you happen to stay with a lady, or a lady stays with a guy for 6 months, that from there they are considered to be legally, or there's some legality, I don't know, whatever you call it, in that. I'd like you to clarify that one. Now, I don't know whether there's anybody from my church here, but hopefully they'll not stone me. But we have many cases of young people who already they have children, and some of them I persuade them, I'm here. You tell me on a Sunday, and tumaliza hii maneno, but they don't want to come forward for it. So I don't know when is what I'm saying is that they have already said they have children. They are ongoing with their life. As far as they are concerned, they are married. But I know the insecurity that is there for some. So I don't know how well that is protected, even if you say there is no certificate, as the law you are saying. Now, when it comes to biological parents, especially let me talk about the side of the father. the fact that a man seared a child, because you said the child has a right to know the father. But you know, somehow how God created us is that a child can be seared anywhere. Hata iwe ni kwa mahindi, huko kwa bush. You know, we know how people have come to this world. It's all different. Is it necessarily, is it, you said it like the child has a right to. And I know many cases where children insist to know their father. But isn't that also the mother, shouldn't the mother also be protected in the fact that they were not actually looking for a child, but a child happened to come? That's another one. Now, in the area of closing homes, as you've said, I find it very confusing because children are still fathered or they are being born out there. And then you're talking about closing, and there's no public participation. Is there public participation in that? Nowadays, we are also educated about public participation. Now, I don't know whether, I hope you're noting down. There are several questions, because I don't know to ask again. Now, I wanted to know also about divorce. Now, the law talks about desertion, depravity, irretrievable breakdown, and also violence in the homes. Now, I am in a church. I'm a pastor. I'm a bishop in my setup. I face a lot of these issues. And it's very embarrassing that some of these are weddings we attended, and everything was good, and yet there is a lot of immorality, unfaithfulness, violence. Now, if in case, whereas the Bible is very clear about divorce in the sense of infidelity, but when it comes to the law, there is violence and the depravity, irretrievable breakdown. So I would like, I know you on your side is a lawyer, but I would like to know, me as a pastor, when I'm faced with this, where do I draw a line? Because me, I might look only at adultery. Sometimes there is violence, and this thing is not working. So I don't know how you're going to help me in that. Now, when you spoke about 50-50 rule, now, has this law been passed or not? I've seen you show feeder. But what we know is that it is a 50-50 share, but where is the law in that matter? Now, when it comes to distribution of property in a polygamous family, I think that one you have explained. Now, when it comes to writing the will, sometimes it's done with the lawyers, and the family don't know what this man agreed with the lawyers. And there any risk of the lawyers altering the will and inserting their own things, whereby they can also benefit from the same? Does the law protect these families, that when this man is making a will, they know it even before it is too late, or when before this man dies? Not just the man or even the woman or the mother of the children. Now, when you talk about, you spoke about this will, you talk about witnesses, because somebody can bring his own friends and they do their own things, but the real people are not there. Now, let me talk of children born out of wedlock. This a lady comes with the children, and then there is then there's the children that they get. What does the law say about the rights of those children or that child who finds himself in a family and later he discovers mimi alikuja na mimi? How is that child protected? I think those are the things I would like to understand.
Okay.
Or adopted, have been adopted or came.
So will you remember all those questions?
I will try to remember. How many did you ask in total? 9. I think you asked 9. You asked 9?
Yeah, just go ahead. I can't, unless I list them now.
Okay. I will try to remember everything. We are supposed to remember everything as lawyers. Would you like I tackle his, or there's somebody at the back? Let's finish with him, because his are very many, The next one we can take in tranches of 3, even if it's the same person. The first question you asked is whether as a licensed marriage officer, and congratulations for that. I can imagine the big switch when the law changed and you had to do everything in advance, so there are no surprises with government. You've got just to be at your best. So in connection with that, you asked about the customary marriage, whether there's a marriage officer. To answer you straight up, no. Ideally, what you're supposed to do, because the checklist is with the Office of the Attorney General, and each one of you can get from eCitizen. If you have an eCitizen account, just go to BRS, the Office of the Attorney General, and then access the checklist on what you need to do. You need now the evidence that indeed there was the customary meeting, the clan of the lady and the clan of the man, because in the customary setting, marriages are negotiated by clans, not by individuals. And then those notes and the minutes are the ones that are taken, and then the forms are filled, and that is good evidence if it pleases the registrar of customary marriages, because there's somebody given that specific task to confirm that indeed there was such a marriage. And then it's registered after the payment of the requisite fee. So that is done in trust by the Office of the Attorney General because of the verification. But you will notice I've talked about clan. So one way or another, in as much as it doesn't talk about elders, you can see there's a place of elders in that setup, because who speaks for a clan? It's an elder. Yes, those are the gatekeepers of culture, so I've answered you on that. The second, no, the family. The family, the couple that wants to register that union, you fill the form. You remember the Office of the AG has the various forms, even for the Christian marriage. Fill the form, give the attachments, because they need those attachments. Most importantly, there's an affidavit to confirm the fact. Pay the requisite fee. I think the last time I checked it was I'm not sure, I think 2,000. It's 2,000, eh? And then they vet, they just verify the documentation, then you're issued with the marriage certificate. So it looks complicated, but it's not complicated. Are you satisfied with that? So to tackle the second question, whereby you said you're a pastor in a church and you're finding it's difficult just to, let me use the word whipping, getting the people to, get to your office on a Sunday for the marriage, the weddings, because of the risk that is involved in the come we stay. I guess that one you just have to use your soft power as a pastor to convince them that there's a risk in them continuing to stay in the come we stay union. The law is not recognizing them. Believe you me, with the decided authorities are cases, the old cases, there have been too many authorities with the same outcome, that come we stay is not recognized, even 20 years, even 30, even 50, unfortunately. So it looks like we just need to speak within those communities so that they understand the risk. That was before the Marriage Act was passed in 2014. You see, I want to explain, and it's what I had explained on the slide, Article 45. It is the basis of all the laws that we have in Kenya on family, because it's the same article that says you've got to come up with laws that talk about marriage. And remember, the Constitution is of which year? 2010. So the Committee on Implementation of the Constitution, they worked very hard. By 2014, there was the Marriage Act, and that is the one that introduced now this requirement to register every marriage, including the customary marriage. So to answer you, the 6 months no longer helps people in that sort of relationships. And I've emphasized that even 20 will not help, even 50, even 100. Okay. The next question you asked is the young couples just living off. I think I've tackled together. They're just living together and getting babies, and they think they are safe because of being in that sort of relationship. Still, it doesn't work that way. They have to formalize everything. As for the paternity, you asked a question. Now I'm on the fourth. You asked a question about protecting the children, especially where the paternity is quite controversial and contentious. I'll give you two scenarios. It could be a one-night situation. That doesn't excuse somebody from the responsibility that comes with paternity. But the one scenario that's very sensitive is where a child is the outcome of rape. You know, perhaps you don't even know who raped you, and you may not even want them to carry that tag, that you are an outcome of rape. You know, it's not nice, even for the mother. So those are the exceptions, but the rule is it's good that children get to know their fathers and their mothers and their heritage, and it is not just good, it's a right. That right is in the Children Act, the one I just quoted, 2022, and it's also in the Constitution, and it's also in the UN conventions. Because you see, we borrow from the international laws. So the local law we have here, the Children Act, is adopted, not fully, but with modifications, because we have our own environment, with modifications to take care of that heritage. So I can confirm to you, because we are litigating with these things. Myself, I go to court, every week I'm in the children's court, and every other day we are litigating with names. The father denied the mother a name, anasema usitumie jina la baba. The lady, maybe she got upset, she left home, and then she went and she changed the name of the child, and now we have to do a reversal. And that reversal is being allowed by the court, because the court also argue a child has a right to know their DNA, their heritage, and not just to know, even to preempt things like even diseases and even incest, because you could be getting married to somebody who is in your lineage, but your parents never told you what was your lineage. It's even in the Bible. It's good to know your ancestry, because we trace the roots of Jesus from Abraham. Not so. So even the law covers that, and it takes care of that. The sixth question.
I think there was something, divorce, whereas the Bible is very strict on except of adultery. But
And
now the law comes
deprivation.
the law comes with violence, irretrievable, whatever, breakdown, depravity. So when it comes to me, because people come and ask me for advice, and they want to divorce, but me, I only know one aspect. So how do I tackle this? Do I tell them, let the court, do I give them my opinion? But then it's up to them. They go and get the interpretation of the laws of the land.
I'm not a pastor, and I would not want to mislead you about how pastors tackle that, Pastor Sube. I believe you'll have your sidelines for pastors to get to discuss how to tackle now the aspects of the Bible. But I'm also aware, because I practice in the family division, and these are come up. One day, I was tackling a divorce of a bishop, and once we finished the court hearing, she asked me, do you think this is right? I asked her. I'm not supposed to think because it's not my case. It's your case. So there's no attachment to your case as a lawyer. I'm just doing my work. And then she popped a Bible verse. If not Matthew 19, then it's Matthew 23. And she quoted 2 reasons. Divorce is allowed in the Bible for adultery and deprivation. You can confirm that. You can confirm that. But the best response from me is that I would rather leave matters of clergy to have their convention and to consult, to caucus, so that I'm not an expert in everything. I don't want to say I'm an expert in the Bible, but I read the Bible as a Christian. Are you satisfied with that? Next question.
About will, where I'm saying just
and then the lawyer, you fear the lawyer can change the contents. I want to encourage you, and this is not to defend myself, that lawyers are officers of the court and they take an oath of office. So unless you come across a lawyer who doesn't respect the oath of their office, then you should be able to trust them that when they are given the will and they finish the processing, then they will deposit it in the right place and they will also notify the family without any alteration. But then we live in a community of people who also are wired to do the wrong things. So the maybe 1 in 1,000 lawyers can do the forgery. But that's pretty unique. So a will should not be a secret, but we live in a society whereby people have kept wills as a secret. I'll give you a story. Maybe you remember that era of, I can't remember the name, but it's a politician from Kenya. He died, and then a broadcast was given to all the lawyers in Kenya, including myself. If you are the one who wrote or who facilitated the writing of XYZ's will, please turn up and help the family, because we know there's a will, but we don't know the contents. Are you imagining how that feels? But that is the society we are living in. And because I'm talking to a Christian community, when you write your will, don't hide it, because it doesn't help the beneficiaries. It could even cause more harm when they don't know what is in the will. It could even help other people. You've seen even abandoned buildings, and they belong to people who started projects, and they never trusted their spouses to tell them that they were running those projects. Let's be better Christians. Okay, I think I've exhausted your questions. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, I remember your question. Actually, I remember it. The new constitution has also taken care of those children. And there's a case that says you should not discriminate on the basis of a child born out of wedlock. So even the word wedlock is not supposed to be used, because they are supposed to be with equal status in the marriage. So they are not supposed to be discriminated against. And when the man marrying the lady decides to take care of that child, it's always good to tidy up and come up with a parental responsibility agreement. We write them so that there's no doubt that they've taken over our responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mercy. I think because I'm pressed of time and the program is very, very tight, I think we need to write down some questions, then we'll look for what time we will be able to answer them. Please, 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 because we are pressed for time and we have other speakers that are going to come in. Is that okay? Yes, yes. Thank you very much. Let's clap for, let's give appreciate Mercy.